Good morning and welcome to the first parallel session of 2016 Smart City Expo World Congress. During the next hour, we will have the opportunity to discuss holistic approaches for urban development and resilience. First of all, I wish to apologize on behalf of Ramon Torra, General Director of Barcelona Metropolitana area. He is the person who was designed to be the moderator today. I will take his place, I will replace him today. My name is Joan Caba. I am architect by the Polytechnical University of Catalonia, MSc in Urban Planning, Urban Design and Development for the Bartlett School of Planning of the University College of London, and currently I am working for the planning department in the Barcelona Metropolitan area. Now, jumping to the topic that we want to discuss today. As we said in the first session, world is urban. More than 54% of global population live today in cities, and this figure will reach the 70% in 2050. So cities from all around the world are growing fast to allocate hundreds of thousands of people that believe that living in cities they will have more opportunities if they live in cities. For me, this is a good of piece news because I am a city enthusiastic. In general terms, cities are the most effective artifact to generating opportunities, boosting wealth and creativity, improving social inclusion and interaction, and saving energy consumption. However, there are dangerous drawbacks and risks associated to cities, and especially for those cities that are growing very fast. Every day, we can see examples of that risk on the news, such as poverty, flooding, marginalization, etc. Planning more resilient cities could be one answer to these problems. But that leads us to the following questions. How can municipal governments create a local policy environment effectively promoting urban development and holistic encouraging resilience? I leave this question to all of you and especially to our speakers today. It's a pleasure and an honor to introduce our panel. Here on my right, it's Norihiko Nomura. It's a General Director for Climate Change Policy of the City of Yokohama. Mr. Magnus Kuvan, General Secretary for Resilient Regions Association. Bruno Hervet is the Executive Vice President, Smart and Resource Cities of the company Suez. And last but not least, Ms. Asha Kaushik, Senior Research Associate for Integration Research and Action for Development. Every speaker will have 10 minutes maximum to expose their views on this interesting topic. And after the four presentations, there will be time for you, for the audience, to reach questions. You have two ways to reach questions: the old-fashioned way, to hands up, and then using our app that has appeared here. So using the app of the Smart City, and voting and answering and asking, and then raise your questions there. So I think that's all from me. So Mr. Norihiko Nomura, the stage is yours.
Ohayou gozaimasu. Bon dia, good morning. My name is Norihiko Nomura, and I am Director General of the Climate Change Policy Headquarters in Yokohama City. This is my second time participating in the Barcelona session. Thank you very much for this valuable opportunity to present today. In my Japanese for English, I'm going to try to introduce city development, keeping the balance among environment, economy, and society in Yokohama. A city 10,000 kilometers away from here in the Far East in Japan. In my presentation, I'd like to explain innovation project through public-private partnership by examples of flood control and energy management. If there's anything you don't understand, please do not hesitate to ask me about it after the session. To give you a brief overview of Yokohama, it is 30 kilometers southwest of Tokyo and opened its port to international trade in 1859. Its population 150 years ago of only a few hundred people has grown to 3.7 million, making it the largest municipality in Japan. So what kinds of urban challenges has Yokohama faced and overcome? Being next to the capital, its population exploded after World War II. It went from 1.4 million in 1960 to 2.8 million in 1980, doubling in 20 years by 1.4 million people. It has now reached 3.7 million. No other city gained so many people in such a short amount of time. These photos show Yokohama 50 years ago. At the time, most urbanizing cities faced similar tough environmental problems. Today, many rapidly growing cities in Asia face the same urban challenges that Yokohama faced 50 years ago, such as air and river pollution, traffic jam, flooding, etc. We have solved these urban issues not by ourselves, but together with various stakeholders such as citizens and businesses. Next, I'd like to talk about our collaboration with citizens in Yokohama. The picture on the left shows a workshop with the mayor and 10,000 citizens 50 years ago in 1967. Its impact was significant. Having discussion in diverse positions gave birth to and fostered a culture of government, citizens, and companies thinking together about what each of our responsibilities are. That thinking is alive and well today, with citizens collaborating in workshops and local experts, universities, companies, and the other related parties leading activities. Now I'd like to explain our priorities when partnering with stakeholders. It's not easy to partner with players with different priorities and objectives. Based on active disclosure, we insist on dialoguing with all stakeholders to recognize each other's different priorities and figure out how to build win-win relationships. Not forgetting transparency and accountability. We value emphasizing with the stakeholders, gaining their trust and going as far as the partnerships requires. These are two examples of resilience based on urban development. One is flood control measures and the other is energy management measures in climate change policy. First, I'll talk about flood control measures. This shows urbanization in Yokohama from 1960 to 2000, with the red representing urbanized districts. In 1960, only the coastal areas were urbanized. By 1980, 60% of the area had been urbanized. And by 2000, about 70% of the area had been urbanized. Before urbanization, the area was mostly forest and paddy fields, so rain would seep into the ground and slowly flow into the rivers. Urbanizing and covering the ground with concrete and asphalt and developing a sewer system, however, caused rainwater flow into the rivers much more quickly. So I introduced two measures for flood control today. First, river dikes and retention ponds near the river. Second, Yokohama City built improved sewage to collect rainwater, and many stakeholders had to build a kind of retention ponds at parks, schools, and private facilities. The slide shows one of the retention ponds at private facilities. It's normally used as a sports facility, including tennis courts, but collects water in times of heavy rain to control downstream inundation at developed areas. There are 4,000 such retention ponds in the city. Next is energy management in Yokohama's climate change policy. This is the Yokohama Smart City Project, or YSCP. YSCP comprises a variety of demonstration projects to build local energy management systems and make Yokohama a smart city, such as installing solar panel power generation systems, popularizing electric vehicles, and introducing home energy management systems, or HEMS. It is based on public-private partnerships with the national government covering 8 billion of the 30 billion yen total project cost, and companies bearing the remaining 5 billion yen. Our HEMS target was installation in 4,000 homes, but we actually achieved 4,230. Our target for residential PV was 27 megawatts, but we achieved 37. Our electric vehicle target was 2,000 cars, but we introduced 2,300, reducing CO2 emissions by 39,000 tons, rather than our target of 30,000 tons, significantly exceeding our 25% reduction target. Next, I'd like to give an example of an application of YSCP demonstration results, energy collaboration between different facilities. When constructing a new ward office, a cogeneration system was also built to be used by the office and a hospital located 5 meters away. A new dedicated power line was run from the hospital to the ward office to supply electricity. Electricity produced by the cogeneration system is sent to the ward office, and the heat produced in this process is used efficiently in the hospital. A BEMS was installed to optimize management of this energy. Introducing the cogeneration system and linking two facilities with differing electricity and heat energy needs through BEMS resulted in environmental, economic, and disaster resilience improvement. Specifically, it reduced CO2 emission by 1,000 tons per year and cost by 40 million yen per year. The 21st century has been called the age of cities, and the role of cities to take on urban issues and global warming caused by rapid urbanization is indeed steadily growing. Cities must stand firm against these challenges. Yokohama will continue to help address urban issues such as sustainable development and global issues such as climate change by sharing the urban development experience and expertise it has gained so far, including through YSCP with cities around the world. I hope you found this presentation useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Norihiko. So.
Good morning. My name is Magnus Kvant. I probably have one of the best jobs in the world. I'm the Secretary General for this organization, Resilient Regions Association. Resilience is a difficult word in Swedish, and I found it also difficult in many Scandinavian language. We have a problem when we cannot translate the word directly. So we are talking about functionality when we're talking about resilience. And we're talking about the city and the regional functionality. So this is resilience when talking to a Swede. And we emphasize the challenges of the sudden shocks, but also on chronic stress that is put on cities due to climate change, rapid urbanization, and old and aging cities, and things like that. Functionality is often taken for granted, but Copenhagen suffered a cloudburst the 2nd of July, and the functionality was interrupted at the time, and it cost a lot of money. It rained 150 millimeters of 3 hours, and the insurance claims reached 900 million euros, and that is a lot of money. But those money is not really an issue. Those are paid back by the insurance company. They are reinvested to fix what has been broken. However, those other 600 millions that is also there, which add up the total cost to 1,500 million as a total cost. Those 600 million euros, they are never paid back by anybody. So we tried to look into what are those costs and where are they coming from. And we found out that these costs were caused by cancellations, interrupted things, traffic jams, and power shortages, and the consequence of those. All these things cost 600 million euros. It was canceled surgeries, it was delivery that was not delivered, it was a business meeting not taking place, and there was a lot of opportunity that really was washed away by the cloudburst. So we start looking into what makes a city function and how can you talk about that? How can you talk with politicians, with engineers, and with the people living in the city? How can you talk about functionality? And we worked together for 2 years with the university and the city of Malmö, city of Lund, and a couple of private companies. And we found out that you can talk about functionality as a system of flows. We are talking about the urban flows, which is these 6 flows. 4 of them are the same as the free flows of EU, and then we added information and energy. And all of a sudden, we have a systematic approach that we can talk about. The researchers, they would like to write a report, they often do, but we decided that we would like to write a handbook and did so. So there's a book about that. When we start working on this, we ask the question, who are responsible and who are working on these urban flows? Who is carrying the functionality of the cities on their shoulders? And we found out that when you look into these flows, you will see that most of the responsibility is taken care of by the private sector, by companies. We found out that in Sweden and in Scandinavian countries, and probably as most of the places in Europe, 85% of the functionality is carried out by companies. Some of the companies are owned by the municipalities, but some of the companies are very, very private and globally operating, like E.ON, etc. So that means we need to collaborate with the private sector much more than we do today to create a more resilient and functional cities and a region. So we are providing an arena where the public sector, the academia, municipalities, governmental agencies, and also all these associations that are bringing citizens to the table as well, to collaborate. We are creating what we call resilient communities around our cities, and we're trying to include more than one city, of course. We're trying to include what we call a functional region. So we are focusing on the regional network, making cities collaborate, making the companies and the private sector, academia, all around this collaborate. And for this, we have a core for the collaboration, which is our executive network of people, both from municipals and from the private sector, as well as from other agencies. But they all have some kind of power. They can decide that we should go in some direction. They could decide that people should start working on a project or invest money on creating knowledge and go forward. But support all this, as we have many municipals and we have a region involved, we realized that we needed some political steering on this. So we're also gathering the politicians of the regions. We are gathering mayors from several cities that have a close relation through the network they create on regional basis. And we annually have at least 2 meetings with the politicians. And they came from all the different parties around in the region, from the left to the right, but they all collaborate on resilience and on functionality. There is no political twist on this. This is something that they can agree is important. This became popular. We started in southern Sweden, and now we're expanding. First of all, in Sweden, of course. We are now setting up a resilient community around the Stockholm area. We are setting up in the middle part of Sweden, and there is a great interest from other countries as well, both from Scandinavia, but we have been approached from Canada, we've been approached from Honduras, and some other places around the world. And that's good, because in the long term, we would like to create a resilient network of resilient communities where we can collaborate, and especially here in Europe, if we could create this network, we could also easily approach big projects, and we could have them financed by EU. Horizon 2020, for example, could be a possibility in the future. So what are then the Resilient Regions Association? What are we? We are a non-profitable organization. We are a neutral platform. We are not in any way owned by a single city to create innovation on that city only. But we are an open organization for as well private sector as the public sector. And that creates something special. That means it's not only the city who carries the responsibility to define the problem and challenges for the future city. It's actually possibilities for the private sector to come up with ideas and suggestions of where we should go to create this increased functionality and to maintain that during pressure. An example is that one company came to us with a small device looking like this and said, we have probably invented the world's best multi-sensor tool. It cost about $15 on the market, and it includes 9 sensors. It's wired through Bluetooth, and it has a battery capacity of 6 years. Simple and quick, and you can connect 5,000 of them. They only had one problem. They had worked on this on 9 months and still had one problem. They had no clue what to do with it. We arranged a typical workshop on this based on the initiative from the company and included cities. And all of a sudden, there were 20 different possibilities to have this multi-sensor used in cities. So it's great when the initiative can come also from the private sector. And we are working on the system of the urban flows, which is also very much linked into the smart future and smart cities. We can link it through the systematical approach of the flows, and flows can be steered and controlled. We're doing that every morning. We're taking a shower, put it on and off, and regulate the temperature and pressure. But we can also steer the urban flows, and we can do that by having sensor, making measurements, and have a steering procedures, and then we can implement a control protocol. And you can probably find a lot of those things in the Expo out on the left of the door. So I hereby finalize this by, if you're interested in having contact with us, this is the contact details. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Magnus. Bruno.
Hello, good morning. I am Bruno Hervet from Suez, and actually I have the second best job on Earth because I'm here to serve and find solutions for the people who have the best job on Earth. So I'm really happy we can gather today. And actually I could have the same presentation than my colleagues just before, so I'm sorry for the repetition. Good news is that we actually share the exact same view on what is a smart city and how we could how we could together being moving forward. I will be again, and as was said before, on the resiliency aspect of urbanism and the cities. You all know those figures, so I'm not putting too much focus on this, but just a few words because I think it's important that we repeat this to ourselves. Since 2008, cities do represent 50% of the world's population. Cities are the place in which 75% of the energy which is produced is being consumed, and this is where 80% of CO2 emissions are generated. So, again, I don't want to repeat my colleagues, but yes, there is a new urban era to be invented. Cities have to face resource scarcity. Elected officials have a very difficult job to do today. They have to do more with less. They have to face the increasing demand from citizens. They have to ensure the attractiveness of the city, okay, to retain jobs, to retain investment and attract more. And they have to keep budgets under control, so that's almost an impossible task. And this is where actors like Suez or others have maybe a role to play. And this is where we envisage the vision of a resourceful city. The objective here is to increase quality of life for the citizen and also to bring fluidity and improve the city's performance to match with the challenges elected officials have to deal with, I've just mentioned before. Today, many things have been done already. You put technology into networks, so I could develop some examples. These are examples that have been implemented by Suez. You have them on the slide, so I'm not developing too much. In Bordeaux, in Singapore, we could have a lot more of examples. And the objective is for tomorrow, which is actually happening today, is to implement and use the digital to balance flows of the ecosystem. So I did like very much what was mentioned before, which is that you should conceive and understand city as a bundle of flows. And having a smarter city, increasing quality of life for citizens, easing the elected official's job goes about how can I optimize all those flows, not maybe one after the other, not maybe everyone in silo at the same time, but maybe by bundling and crossing and working on interactions. This is precisely what we are developing, for instance, in partnership with the city of Saint-Étienne in France, which is a digital platform, which will be the first one in France and maybe in Europe. And it's all about bundling the data that comes from mobility, from the different utilities, from the social networks, from urbanism, and deliver new services. Just a couple of examples that might indicate to you what are the objectives we are looking for and developing together with the city, with the Association of Consumers. I'll give you two examples. One, I have a physical handicap, okay, and I want a parking lot for parking in 1 hour in this neighborhood. And actually, having this information depends on your capacity to cross and bundle lots of different data. Okay? This is clearly one of the uses, very concrete, very useful for a specific population that does not always get what they need. A second example, which is more light. I'm going jogging tomorrow morning. Okay? I want to go jogging in this set of hours. I want to run 5 kilometers. Please give me the best way to run, depending on air quality, okay, temperature and meteo, and works on the streets as performed by the city's workforces. Okay, again, not that difficult to do, and use is there, is very concrete. Will it help in improving quality of life? For sure. Well, those two examples do just to show you what is our vision on what is achievable in the near future, and how can you improve things by thinking your city as a global ecosystem. How can you do that? We'll have lots of conferences these days on the data, okay? Data management, technology, and so on. That's fine. My personal belief is that data is a very powerful driver, but it's not the solution. It's not enough. Why is that? For two main reasons. Again, I insist, we have to understand cities as a global ecosystem, which is composed of data, goods, energy, mobility, people's opinion matters sometimes, and all this has to be managed together and adapted on a case-by-case basis, because you won't find two cities with exactly the same problematics and exactly the same expectations. So I don't believe it's in standard product. I don't believe in standard systems. I don't believe this is how you can match the objective we have indicated before. So that's the first element. The second element is that, and I think that was very clear in the presentations just before, all this has to be done with policymakers, urbanism, engineers, users, citizens association. Okay, it's all about putting all those people together. So I don't know if we can have meetings with 10,000 people like in Yokohama in the same room. I was pretty much impressed. But today I think here, again, digital can help in having all those interactions with all those people live. Just one example of how you can be a multi-segments operator and how you can mobilize expertise in helping and contributing, having a city which is becomes smarter and resourceful in the future. Okay. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Bruno, for your time. Asha?
A very good morning to you all. This is Asha Kaushik, Senior Research Associate from Integrated Research and Action for Development. I'll be presenting our research study on integrating climate resilience in smart cities, taking case study of Ahmedabad city. First, let me introduce you with IRADe. It's a think tank set up in 2002, and we work basically in 5 thematic areas: sustainable urban development, climate change and environment, energy and power systems, poverty alleviation and gender, agriculture, and food security. We are a center of excellence for climate change and urban development designated by Ministry of Urban Development, Government of India. And in terms of coverage, we have worked in 29 Indian cities and 19 states. So if we talk about why we need climate resilient smart cities, I'll talk in context of India. India accounts for 17% of world's population, and urban population has increased from 25.8 million to 377 million in 2011. It is predicted that urban India will swell up to 600 million by 2030, adding an additional 223 million new inhabitants and building 70% of infrastructure of these future cities over the same period of time. Cities currently contribute around 58% of India's GDP, which is expected to grow by 70% by 2030. Hazard and rapid urbanization has resulted in growing vulnerability to environmental hazards, beside that increasing urban poverty. And IPCC SEREX report 2012 says that the increase due to climate change, there has been increase in frequency and intensity of extreme climate events. Cities have to bear heavy economic losses due to extreme climatic events. For example, floods in Jammu and Kashmir resulted in economic losses of $16 million and affected 3.6 million people in the state. The disaster was cited the worst economic disaster of the world in the 2014. Similarly, in Andhra Pradesh, there were losses of $7 billion due to Cyclone Hudhud, and city of Visakhapatnam was the worst affected. Recently, Chennai faced $3 billion losses due to floods in 2015. Hence, no smart city can afford so much losses that wipe away decades of the progress. Hence, there is need of systematic response that looks at engineering design, technical solutions to ensure climate and disaster resilient cities. Hence, minimizing risk to the citizens and city infrastructure needs to be prioritized. If we talk in terms of representative concentrated pathways for India for 2030s, 2060s, and 2080s, here are different predictions. On temperature front, not much change is anticipated under RCP 2.6 scenario in either 2060s or 2080s. Others are for RCP 4.5 and RCP 6. In terms of precipitation, under RCP 2.6 scenario, an increase of 5% in precipitation is likely into 2060s related to 2030s. In RCP 6, it is likely to increase by 20% in 2060s, where in RCP 8.5, the increase is estimated to be 30%. Hence, climate change coupled with unplanned and reckless development is leaving our cities increasingly vulnerable. So cities have tough challenge partly as a result of direct and indirect impacts of climate change and pre-existing vulnerability to disasters. The current purpose of the study is to provide guidance and recommendations for Ahmedabad city to become disaster and climate resilient, and some of our inputs were accepted by the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation in forming the smart city plan of the city. The methodology of the study, it used the Higgs framework, which is designed by IRADe. In this framework, we have 4 components: hazard, infrastructure, governance, and socio-economic conditions, in which different components are there. Like in hazards, there's temperature, precipitation, mean sea level, frequency of drought. In infrastructure, we considered service level benchmarks for water supply, sewerage system, solid waste management, stormwater drainage. In governance, we considered whether the government is participatory, transparency, it is taking into account accountability, response efficiency, and capability. Socio-economic indicators, we took slum population, what is the percentage of slum population in a city, literacy rate, migration flow, and urbanization trend. We collected different information for these indicators, and the lacuna observed from analysis were made basis for providing recommendations for climate resilient framework of Ahmedabad city. We also prepared digital elevation models of the cities and highlighted the flood-prone areas and critical infrastructure. This is the overall methodology of the study. If we talk about Ahmedabad city, it is the 5th largest city and 7th largest urban agglomeration in India. Out of 6.5 million population of the city, approximately 13% of the total population of the city lives in slum. It means this percentage of population is highly vulnerable to natural hazards. If we look at the climate and topography, predominantly arid climate and average maximum temperature of the city is 41.3 degrees Celsius. The average rainfall of the area is 782 mm. And as it is a riverine city, it is highly prone to flooding. Here, the hazard profile of the city is shown. This table, it shows the months in which the different hazards have struck the city, and it is evident that Ahmedabad is prone to multiple hazards with highly vulnerable to earthquakes, floods, and heat waves. This map, it shows the impact. These are the areas which are low-lying areas and highly prone to urban flooding. The areas marked in circles, these shows the high concentration of population in the flood-prone areas. It means whenever hazards strike the city, suffering is colossal in these areas. Urban heat island effect. The urban heat island effect is increasing in the city due to the increase in built-up area. The table, it shows a clear increase in the built-up area from 1999 to 2011, from 39.6% to 52.2%. And hence a decrease in vegetation and water bodies. Hence we come up with a set of recommendations in consideration of different parameters. Like for urban floods, as I'm short of time, I can't read everything. So basically for urban floods, we recommended that as like state disaster management plan, there should be city disaster management plan, which is also recommended by the Disaster Management Act 2005. Upgrading of infrastructure should be there. emergency operations centers and the critical infrastructure of the city should not be in the hazard-prone areas. In terms of heat wave, Ahmedabad city is the first city in India which has launched heat action plan in 2013. Records related to history of hazards, infrastructure, detail of health center should be maintained, updated on regular basis. Moreover, detailed GIS maps from ULB should be shared with ward committees. In terms of water supply, they should be mandate for rainwater harvesting, mandating meters for every water connection because non-revenue water percentage is really high. In terms of stormwater drainage, they should be improving the water drainage network, linking them to water bodies, and standards to be made for treating and reusing the rainwater. Similarly, different set of recommendations we are coming up. For critical infrastructure, there should be digitization, mapping of critical infrastructure on GIS, share the data with the disaster response team. For management, there should be single central office needed for consolidated database management system. A comprehensive geographical information system should be there, which plots all the features of the city and its environs with necessary data to be developed, which will act as a tool in developing planning. In terms of capacity building, there should be institutional capacity which should be strengthened using comprehensive training programs. This is supposed to be land use map of city by 2011, and residential area, it is likely to be increased to 42%, which is not a good sign. Hence, the master plan development plans and town planning scheme mechanisms should keep in mind that our city UDPFI guidelines should be followed. Green areas, open spaces should be given priorities. If we look at the crux, then disaster risk reduction. DRR should be integrated into city planning. Identification of vulnerable areas of the city should be there. There should be separate budget for disaster risk reduction. In terms of infrastructure, maintenance of infrastructure database should be there. Reducing per capita water energy consumption, improving fuel efficiency. Crisis management, recovery from smart meters and advanced outage management systems. In terms of urban environment, passive design measures to increase thermal comfort, recycle, reuse of water to be encouraged, and PPP model for maintenance of public parks should be there. So that's all. These are our partners. If you see collaboration, kindly contact me at this email ID. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you all of you that have keep in time. So thank you for giving me this job very easy. So it's time for questions. I think there's only one question from the app. So I will read this first, and then I will open to everyone that wants to participate. So I think it's for you, Asha. So most of the planned smart cities in India are pre-existing. How do you visualize combating and hazard planning and disaster preparedness while achieving targets? Yeah, you can read it. It's a quite complicated question.
Yeah, it's right. Cities are pre-existing. We just have to renovate them. Basically, if we talk about hazard planning and disaster preparedness, we should focus on the SLB, service level benchmarks. If the coverage can be improved, then smartness can be achieved to much extent. And moreover, like I said, we recommended different. We come up with different recommendations considering different components. So if we follow those, and cities should be planned, further planning should be in consideration with the disaster profile of the city. So this can be achieved to some extent.
Thank you, Asha. So anyone in the audience want to ask to our panel today? Any question? Sorry, you should.
Hello, my My name is Valérie Valérie Guimet from Suez, and I've got a question for the city of Yokohama. Very nice presentation and very clear. Thank you. I just have a question about the ponds and the reference and example that you showed us. How do you manage the communication when there is a flooding? I mean, when you use a pond as a tennis court, then how do you involve the citizens when there is a flooding and the tennis court is under the water?
You can use that one.
Thank you very much for the questions. I'm sorry, but my English is not good at for you, so please allow me to answer the question in Japanese, and my very great interpreter answer the English. Okay? リテンションポンズ、遊水池を、に限らず、横浜では雨が降りそうな時に、雨が降ってフランティングしそうな時に、すべての市民の方に、情報を提供して、そしてどの場所が危ないかということをきちんとお伝えする、映像でもパソコンで見る、アプリで見れるような形にしています。
When not only with retention ponds, that's a system we use not only with retention ponds, but with all similar installations. When there is announcement of heavy rain, we inform the citizens through a number of channels, including image that they can check in their computers.
特に、テニスコートのようなところで子どもたちが雨に浸かると危ないので、その場合は事前にその情報を流して、携帯だけじゃなくて、なんだ音声での情報とか車でこう危ないというのを情報を流す、そういう形でやって。
Especially when it comes to ponds that are used in tennis courts, as you say, that children are likely to be, where children are likely to be. This information is released through mobile phones and also through the systems in their cars, so people listen to the information so that they don't send their children there.
Okay, thank you. Is any other questions? Anyone want to rise? Yeah. Sorry, wait 1 second.
Okay. Well, back. Okay. Thank you all for your very interesting interventions. I work for Université Côte d'Azur based in Nice, and in Nice also resilience is a very prominent issue. So my question was for the Secretary of the Resilient Regions Association, and I wanted to know if you had already set up a network in Europe or worldwide, and whether this was backed by the European Union.
Thank you. Yes, in a sort of way, we have started to set up a network, mainly in the Scandinavian countries. We are in collaboration with the city of Vejle in Denmark, for example, who has a chief resilient officer and is part of the 100 RC network from Rockefeller Foundation. They are the only Scandinavian and Nordic European city, so they are eager to collaborate together with others who has the same challenges as they are. However, we are setting up this collaboration in Sweden at the moment, and at the time there are requests, as I mentioned, from Canada and from Honduras, and we are at the moment not getting any finance or any help from EU, and that is not because the EU doesn't want to, it's because we haven't asked them yet. But we are getting there, and we're quite a new organization. We haven't been around so very long, and I think it takes a little bit time to build up.
Thank you, Magnus. So, is there any other questions? So if not, there's no more questions. I will ask you one question for Magnus as well. So, in your presentation, you raise a good point for me, that is the functionality, and functionality can be interrupted, and that means cost. That is a lot. That means a lot of money. So, investing in resilience, investing in technology and other kind, have you make the calculation how this money returns to a city, to a region? And, yeah.
I love that question. This was when we approached Copenhagen after the cloudburst. We asked them, how have you calculated? How have you measured those figures you came up with? Because they are a tremendous amount of money, especially for those money that are forever lost, which is not reported by the insurance companies. How do you measure that? How do you calculate, and how do you go forward? And the truth behind that they had no clue. It was something they had measures between the two fingers, actually. They have asked around a little bit of different questions and things like that. It wasn't a systematic approach. They had never done it before, and they don't know how to do it the next time. So we start talking with our cities, with our members, with the private sector, and we crowdsourced some money, and we made a pre-study, and we had a hypothesis saying that it is probably possible to find a method of how to calculate these costs. So we have made a pre-study of this, and we are now in discussions with a few companies, as well as governmental agencies in Sweden, if we could finance a project where we actually develop these methods, these calculation methods, because we think they would be great benefit if we could do that. We could even use it in the cost analyze projects, how to find out whether it's good to invest or good to stay away from that investment. So today, when we look up on this, there is no method. We haven't found anything in the world, actually, and but we have started. So I love that question. It's a good question.
Okay. So it's last opportunity for questions. Don't be ashamed. Yeah, thank you. It's a rare opportunity to have these 4 speakers here of this level, so I support you to make questions.
Kaushik, my question is directed to you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a repetition of the same question. I just wanted to know, like, for example, say it's the city of Bhubaneswar. I can imagine that the new construction and the new development can be done by the benchmarks, but the city is like 50, 60 years old. How do you plan to counter those parts of the city which are not benchmarked to be ready for any kind of disaster or cyclone, at the same point of time not reinvesting a lot of money to redo the whole city? That's one picture I would like to see.
See, to be very frank, I'm not a planner.
Okay.
But yeah, my recommendation is to build scenarios. Okay, if suppose I consider representative concentrated pathways, this city in coming future, water will rise if this much is the radiative forcing, this much water will rise, okay, this much water will rise. So whatever planning should be there, that should be in consideration of those factors. Another thing, okay, whatever areas we are building, that in that way, SLBs should be considered. Because most of the cities where we went, like Ahmedabad and all, they are well developed, but they face this thing, urban floods, very frequently, because their stormwater drainage, it's not good. Dehradun as well, it was very poor stormwater drainage. It was built years back. Yeah. So the new construction, whatever, it should be in consideration of the climate aspect. And for whatever is existing, we can make some preparedness measures, like emergency operation centers are there. They should not be in the low-lying areas. Something we can plan like that. The green spaces, they should be increased. So this factor, DRR factor, should be integrated into urban planning in every aspect. That was my point.
Okay. Thank you.
So-
Great case study, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay. There's no more questions in the floor. I'm gonna try to sum up a little bit what has been already said today. It's a quite complicated job for me to do it because there has been a lot of things. We had today here 4 different perspectives of how we can deal with resilience and in the urban development, but not only urban development. He has already said a lot about urban regeneration as well. So cities that are already built, so how can we transform it or work on that to be more resilient? So he has already said that we are in a new era, that we are not talking about the future, we are talking about the present. So we have to, and we are in a context that financial crisis, and we have to do more with less. So to do that, there has been said that it is important that put all the actors together, all the stakeholders, to involve the private and the public as well. That is challenging because almost for the public sector that has not used to work like that, and also it's about also for the people, for the citizens, that has to be done in a very transparent way, that all these agreements are open to everyone and are open to participate. And that is crucial because if we don't do that, has been said that we have life in risk, there are a lot of money lost, floods, decreasing quality of life, and at the end, what is suffering more is the most poor people. So thank you very much for all the speakers to be here, and it has been a pleasure to moderate. It has been the job has been very, very easy for me, so thank you very much. Thank you.